Hey everyone, welcome to the Wild and Uncut Podcast brought to you by Ruger. I'm your host, Kristy Titus. Thank you for tuning in. The line is going hot, so let's go full send on this episode. Hey everybody, thank you for joining us for the Wild and Uncut Podcast. We are coming at you live from Hunt Expo, and I'm with Cody McCarthy. And Cody, you work with Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls. You're on our pro staff.
Yep.
You've got a world championship in elk calling under your belt rather recently, and then you've taken numerous top 2-3 type titles as well, and you're a pretty exceptional caller of all things.
Yeah, between whether it's waterfowl or turkeys or predator calling, it's one of those things that I've always been kind of a natural at. And the turkey calling is cool because I'm originally from north central Idaho, so we have a lot of turkeys, and where I grew up we couldn't necessarily run bear baits and so as a kid it was easier to go out turkey hunting than it was because we couldn't go set bear baits, and so really grew up turkey hunting. And the similarities between elk hunting and turkey hunting were always cool. Anything that you can call and kind of fool was always a passion to me. Like, get on their same level, think like they think. And so turkey hunting has always been a real kind of passion of mine. And a really cool thing that you can do with turkey hunting is, new hunters, getting them into it. It's a really good first experience. It was for me. And then, for kids, because, they can go at 8 years old. And so for, getting kids out there. And
your kids are still probably a little too young to take turkey hunting yet.
Yeah, a little bit. We're getting close. In Oregon we can. But we're gonna wait till they're 8 and go through all the proper fire. We're going through all that right now, learning how to shoot and the firearm safety and shooting bows and arrows and learn how to make all the sounds and all the fun stuff. So
yeah, no, it's nice. I mean, turkey hunting was never like a super big passion of mine either, but it's something to do in the spring, and
it's nice weather.
Well, it's great weather. It's warm, and it's a super fun hunt.
Yeah.
And if you put a little into it, you get a lot out of it.
Yeah,
and you're talking to turkeys, and there's only a couple times a year you can really have that interaction with them, and it's similar. People say it's like elk hunting. I would disagree. Okay, it's not like elk hunting, but it is similar in the fact that you have that. That interaction with them. And
the thing with elk hunting and turkey hunting where it varies, with elk, it's usually 1 or 2, encounters a day. For turkeys, you can have multiple different birds, and you can shoot multiple a day, and
depending on your state, check your local regulations.
Right.
Some places you can't shoot more than 1 in a day.
Right. No, you're right. But it's one of those deals where just interaction in general is just super fun, and it's nice weather, and it's just cool to see their mannerisms. They have really cool mannerisms. They're really cool, and there's multiple different species, and so the different colors and stuff like that. So I think it's pretty cool.
Well, out west we're very lucky because we have a lot of both Merriam's and Rio Grande turkeys. So we have that opportunity. In some hunts, like we were hunting in Oregon last year, and we had a combination of Rios and Merriam's. And of course, I ended up shooting a Rio. This year I'm holding out for a Merriam's though. I'm like, okay, if a Rio comes strutting in, we're just going to do video because I'm going to hold out my tag for a Merriam's because there's some really beautiful
so pretty.
birds.
The white tips are so gorgeous.
They're
just dark bodies.
And they're big. They're big birds, big, beautiful birds. But so with, talking about turkey hunting, we both work with Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls. And, turkey hunting is obviously a passion of ours. And, I kind of wanted to take this podcast away from like the elk and focus on like how you're successful turkey hunting, how I'm successful turkey hunting, kind of go over some different calls and some things that Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls makes that, we can take these calls and go in the field and be successful.
Of course, yeah. So with turkey hunting and turkey calling, it's similar. There's multiple different sounds to make, but similar to elk, they key off emotion. So if you add emotion to a call, you are going to get better results. Now, we have several different calls, whether it's a diaphragm call, box call, a pot call. Either way, they have their own benefits for subtlety, soft. Box call, something super loud to cut through a windy day and get them to locate. Or a lot of the times turkeys do what they call shot gobbling. So where it's a woo, 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 or
we have the crow call
or a crow call. You can. Most people can do the owl call with their mouth, but we sell the crow call. So for like a windy day, that crow call goes out and get them to shot gobble. Then you can get into position a little easier.
I use the crow call a lot when I'm scouting. So if I'm trying to figure out where they're roosting, if I can get them in the evening after they've gone to their roost tree, I like to get out, do some driving, shock them, hit that crow call, get them to gobble, figure out where the roost tree is, and then look around. Okay, well, where can we pop up a blind? Because I do a lot of bow hunting for turkeys, so I'm always looking where can I set a blind and a decoy, so when they come off that roost in the morning. Once I hear them fly and they're on the ground, I can start hammering them.
Yeah, and that's the nice thing, when you're bow hunting, because I pretty much only shoot turkeys with the bow, but I don't use a ground blind. I think decoy is more imperative to shooting with a bow, just because once their eyes get fixed on a decoy, it allows you to draw. You can set your maximum range a little easier. But another time I like to use a crow call is right in the midday, right in the heat of the day. You're kind of out walking around. Maybe you just blew up a turkey, or had a encounter that didn't go as well. And you're just kind of walking around midday, just blow that crow call and get one that's like, oh, and then once they start gobbling, they kind of figure it out. They kind of start like, oh, well, I've identified myself, so chips all in kind of deal. So usually you can get them, and honestly, for the majority of my turkeys, I like to hunt them off the roost because it's fun to watch them fly down, but I honestly kill a lot of my turkeys at
midday,
10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. When
the hens are laying.
Yeah, and they're off and they're just cruising around and you're out and the sun's nice, and and there's a lot of different ways to go about it as far as turkey hunting. In like the South or the East, where you have limited properties, you have to be a little bit more tactful as far as, because you only have so much land. You don't want to push them. You only have so many birds, and so as far as in just topography alone, so where can you set up? Whether it's a super tall wheat field where they're out in the wheat field and you have to crawl on your belly and do that, or you have to set up in a brush line and on a cut cornfield. I don't know. A lot of those, there's a lot of different tactics, and so using like a pot call out east is super popular because it's super soft, subtle. You don't necessarily blow them out; they just come through slowly, purrs really well. We
introduced this year a new aluminum pot call that's got a definite different tone than a traditional pot call, and it's a. So I don't want to describe it as a harsher tone, but it is definitely more of a harsh tone.
It's a higher pitch.
A very high pitched tone, and it's got a different sound. So, if you have some pretty call-weary birds, trying the new aluminum pot call can, maybe diversify that sound octave a little bit, just to kind of trick up your birds.
You can really hit that soft, the higher pitch, but more subtle. It's not so high pitch, but it's just enough to where those birds key in on that higher pitch sounds. And the softer ones are and that's where I think the aluminum pot call is. It offers one, durability. You scratch it up, use the striker, and it offers a really good crisp sound. Yep. Super easy to use.
I gotta find the sweet spot on it.
Pull straight.
You give a demo. You know the sweet spot on this one. There he goes.
So it's that real soft, but it's still got that high pitch enough sound to where they'll key on it. But it's soft, it's mellow. Honestly, the durability of the aluminum. The only problem with using a pot call is that. But in that case, if you hit it, it almost sounds like they're cutting. So that cutting sound that sounds like more natural. So if you make a boo-boo,
it's not game over.
It's not game over, but you can get that real that real like tree yelp, especially like you said, hunting the ground blind. You have them roosted, they're coming down, that soft tree call, let them know you're there, let them know they go, give them a fly down cackle with the diaphragm or a box call, and you're kind of in business.
My go-to turkey call, really, like I'll use a slate, and this strutter box though.
Yeah.
I mean, this thing hammers.
It does.
Like,
it's for a windy day, getting through. It just cuts. Cut through the wind, or for locating those birds farther off. It really allows you to do a lot with it. So. You can really cut through that wind, especially when you're listening and you're making the mouth calls. Sometimes, like similar to elk calling, trying to locate a bull, and you're the one bugling. Sometimes it's hard to locate
where
that bull or that bird out there. So with here, you can kind of put it off to the side and still have a good ear to listen, so you can really pinpoint where that bird is.
And the turkeys are a lot like elk. You'll try one call and there's not necessarily a response. The woods are kind of gone dark on you. And then you'll pick up a different call. Like a lot of times I'll be on a pot call doing those really soft yelps and just really like little purrs and trying to get the turkeys kind of to respond. And if nothing's happening, man, when I pick up this strutter box, it is so loud.
Yeah.
And I've had hens come in screaming at me.
For sure.
Like, it is the most hilarious thing when you're doing the yelp and then the hens are doing the yelp back, and they'll come in like angry.
And it's amazing how close the box call is to that actual hen.
Turkey.
I mean, a lot of those times those hens sound like a rusty car
they're
door,
horrible,
and it's like, whoa, holy smokes.
Yeah.
And so that box call really offers a very realistic tone. And like for real, you can really, those hens will come up, and I've had hens come up to a hen decoy and puff up. They puff themselves up, and those real boss hens.
Oh man, and they are like literally last year we have the coolest footage of this hen running across a meadow. Because we were hunting in the mountains. It was pretty interesting because we were hunting in elk country where we're picking up elk sheds and turkey hunting at the same time, which was a total first for me.
Yeah.
But we had this hen. I was hitting the strutter box, and this hen just was so angry at me. She came running in. I mean, she was gonna just whoop some. It was like a cat fight. Like this was gonna go down. And it's amazing how well the turkeys respond. But the toms specifically, man, I mean, they almost couldn't resist the strutter box. Like the sound of it was just fired them up.
It's really good because a lot of the times, if you have one thing going, they almost kind of just like people. They just kind of tone you out.
Yeah.
But if you give them a change up, so say you're using a pot call, and then you're doing the soft purrs and little soft little clucks and stuff, they're like, well, okay, yeah, you're there. But then you give them a yap, yap, yap with a box call, and they're like, whoa, hey, who's that? What is that? And it just kind of like grabs their attention. And so, I mean, the change up is really good. And like I said, the realistic sounds you get out of the strutter box, the different kind of cuts you can do. I mean, if you can wrap a rubber band on it, usually you can shake it and even act like a little gobbler. I mean, the versatility is good. You have it sitting here, you have it strapped to your leg with the gun up. I mean, there's a ton of stuff you can do with it, which is really nice. But
our diaphragms, they're a little bit wide in the palate.
But most turkey calls are.
But most turkey calls are, in order to get those really raspy sounds.
Yeah, a lot of it has
design and construction is just a little different.
A lot of it has to do with the turkey calls, the difference between elk and turkey diaphragms. The turkey diaphragms are built on a wider frame with different thicknesses of latex, and they're all layered a little different, and then there's cuts in them to give them multiple pitches. So like the issues with the elk diaphragms we have that are double reeds is when you first pull them out of the package, there's not that adhesion between them. So sometimes you kind of get a two-tone effect. Well, turkey calls, that's what you want.
Yeah.
And so there's different variations. And honestly, the turkey calling world, just because there's so many turkey hunters out there, because you start thinking that the whole South, I mean, they don't have elk. They have turkeys. They have turkeys, deer, pigs. And, so the turkey diaphragm market is one that's really pretty tough to get into. And with these diaphragms, I think that we can really make a push to be, a strong competitor in those turkey fields for those guys that are specifically turkey hunters.
Yeah. And our Captain Hook turkey call isn't quite as wide as like the one I tweet, Black Max, and then the Sharp Tooth Jack. That one's just a little bit narrower, and it has the traditional pallet plate top on it, where the other ones do not have the top on it. It's more like single latex, and then it's got two
little cuts on it that kind of give a little bit raspier sound. But if you're, let's say you're making a transition into, say you're an elk person, and you've been an elk person, you're kind of looking to find a call that kind of transition you in. You're kind of like, well, I don't really know about turkey hunting. Let's give it a try. That Captain Hook is a good one to just get introduced to a turkey call. Something very similar, feel similar to your elk diaphragm, but it's the wider frames and the different cuts that you get that really give those good turkey sounds. One, because of the way your tongue moves. The reason why we have our palate plates with our elk calls is because, one, it's eliminating the second tongue movement, because as we're pushing the diaphragm to get that high clear note, our tongue is moving. So as our tongue's moving, that's what's causing, when we don't have a palate frame, for those calls to stall out. Well, in turkey calling, you want your tongue moving, and you want that diaphragm moving around your mouth so you can manipulate the call better. You want those different things, whether it's a key run and you're folding your tongue up on the side of it to give it, to kind of push to give it clear sound, or little, clucks and purrs and things like that. Or you're just pushing the diaphragm, to the best of your ability, like you normally would. The larger presence with your tongue gives that wider, deeper sound, because, one, there's more latex. But as far as turkey calling, a lot of it comes from your diaphragm.
Yeah, your stomach.
You have to push it through to get those realistic sounds. The diaphragm is my preferred choice. I mean, I use all these when needed. Like I said, you're in a field, you're set up in a ground blind, you got a bunch of weary birds that are, a private land situation where they've been pushed around by different people. A pot call is super good. I carry the strutter box for when it's windy and midday and you need to really get that loud cut through that wind, because heaven forbid when you're in the mountains, and because that's where all of our turkeys are. We hunt mountain birds to alfalfa farm field birds, and so you want to reach out there and get them. So that's where the box call is nice. But the go-to call for me, especially when you're trying to shoot a bow, you can't be messing around with the pot call and making all these weird sounds and you're reaching for your bow, because you got to be focused. Because in my situation, you got to set yardage, you got to make sure you got a window open and everything not move, and clip your release on, all those good things. Those are all super important to being successful. And so the mouth diaphragm allows you to give those calls while being completely set up. Because sometimes, usually when turkeys are coming, there's the old wives' tale of the old men that kill a lot of turkeys. They're like, hey, you stay put, be patient, and there's some validity to that. But sometimes when you're at turkey hunting, especially in where I turkey hunt and the experiences I have, if you're sitting there for more than an hour, they aren't coming. Go find another bird. And so being able to be on the move, and when it happens, it's going to happen fast. They're going to come in. And so the mouth diaphragm allows
you versatility.
That versatility, and there's so many sounds you can make with them. Yeah, it takes a little bit. If you're not experienced with the diaphragm call, we have all these other options. But if you are, it's probably the most common way to go.
So sorry, excuse me. I am, very experienced at operating a diaphragm. These ones, the turkey calls for me, I struggle with just a little bit because they are a wider frame. Right. So I do struggle with making those sounds. The Captain Hook call is kind of my go-to for the diaphragm, because it is a more traditional feel and fit of like an elk call. I am no genius with a diaphragm call when it comes to making turkey sounds. But I got to be honest, like, I've never had my inexperience with being, a very skilled turkey caller. I don't have a variety of vocabulary that I can use a call and make a ton of sounds the way I can with elk.
Right.
but it's never impeded my turkey hunting success because, fortunately for us, we make calls that are simple to use and effective. Yeah. And so that's what I love about it is, we have calls here for the most advanced turkey hunter, the most discriminate ear for sounds. Like, those people that, have very, very sound-weary birds and they're very experienced callers, we have the calls that are going to make the sounds that they're looking for. We also have stuff that make great sounds also, but are a little easier to use.
Yeah, for the novice.
And
sure.
You don't even have to be a novice turkey hunter. You can be successful every year, and the diaphragm maybe you have a gag reflex or a latex allergy or something, and it just doesn't work for you. There's other options, and that's what I really like. I mean, for me, I like being independent and not having to rely on somebody else to come do stuff for me. And and I have online gotten some flack from some people. They're like, "Wow, you really kind of aren't great at turkey calling," and it's like, well, I got a bird at the end of the day. Isn't that what we're there for? And I think it's important for people to not be intimidated. Yeah. To buy a call and get out and try because you just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, and there are turkey calling is difficult at times. Yeah. But then turkey hunting, also like that. I think that's why it gets such an up and down riff is because some people are like, you hunt those things? Like, why don't you just run them over with the car? Like, they're in my yard.
They're in my yard everywhere. They're in your yard everywhere pooping until you go to hunt them.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So, like, people, there's people have kind of like a misconception. Yeah. But really, a few basic things, it doesn't take. No. Honestly, turkey hunting is, like I said, if you're brand new at it, you get in an area where you see turkey sign, do a little bit of scouting, locate some birds, use a few of these super easy calls, and honestly, you don't need to call very much. No. Patience is kind of the main thing. So if you're don't be intimidated at all. Turkey hunting is super fun. It's awesome, like I said, for kids or to get in it because the weather's nice. It's super beautiful. You can go look for sheds at the same time if you're where I'm at. Like, it's amazing. It's just a fun time. Go ride the 4-wheelers around. Just be outside. Pick morel mushrooms. Like, for sure. I mean, there's a ton to do out there, and it's in the spring, and it's really pretty. So yeah, definitely don't be intimidated to do it.
So I typically, like when I'm bow hunting, I pop up a blind, get in the blind, and I try to keep as many windows shut and dark as possible. Okay. And I'll just like peek occasionally. Like if I hear something coming, I'm peeking, and then I like to have my decoy set up at about 12 to 17 yards.
For sure.
I want them close because if a bird commits and comes in and hits that decoy, struts around it, whatever, it's a chip shot with a bow. Yep. It makes it super easy, and your success rate at that point is really high because you have a very close shot. I really try to have my bow at full draw when the turkeys come into my line of sight. So it's really important for me to kind of be aware of where the turkey is, and when he crosses that threshold of line of sight in my blind, that I'm at full draw and ready to make that shot, which has worked really well for me. Yeah. But having the decoys close like that also, if those turkeys kind of hang up, hopefully they're kind of strutting around and hanging up within a space where you can have an ethical shot with your bow still.
For sure. And there's, the thing is, when they come in at full strut, I mean, the closer the better. I mean, if you set like I do the same thing. I set my decoy up 10 yards. I have a Jake, and what works best for where I'm at is we use strutters with real fans and real wings, and they key off that UV, and so we have pretty good success with it to where, whether it's a blind, most of the time where I'm at, if you're on a skid road, you set up on a little elbow on a skid road and you can shoot them at 4 yards. I mean, it's pretty awesome. The decoy.
At 4?
Oh yeah.
Oh wow, that's really close.
Yeah, that's what I shot one. That's the last one I shot with the bow. Is 2 years ago. I shot it at 4 yards, full strut. It was awesome. But but when they get puffed up like that, they look
enormous.
It's not necessarily like you shoot them like behind the shoulder on an elk or a deer. Like you shoot them, you gotta shoot them right through their wings. And the thing is people are like, well, I want to like. They have the broadheads
cut the head off.
Decapitate them and stuff. And, that is super difficult. If they're in full strut and they're facing you, that's one thing. But when they're pecking their little heads around, it's very difficult. So making that ethical through the wings and pinning them down and using the good broadhead of choice, that's how I've had the most success with it. But yeah, the closer you can get them, and like you said, if you...
I like that full frontal shot or facing away shot.
The Texas hard shot?
The Texas heart shot on a turkey
it's pretty lethal.
it's a really good shot.
Yeah.
Especially with a bow. I mean, like for me, that's a money shot, and then face on is a money shot.
Yeah.
So
And
a turkey broadside can be a lot riskier shot.
Yeah, just because you're dealing with all those chest feathers.
Bones.
Yeah.
Or feathers, muscle.
There's big
There's
poofy.
not a lot there.
The very first, I think when I shot my first turkey with the bow when I was 11, and I actually missed him the first arrow I shot. He come flying off the hill, and they flew right to us. I missed him from dang near me to you.
Oh no!
Yeah,
You're
that was
like,
awesome.
ah!
And I shot right through his feathers, and you could see the hole as he'd run off, and the broadhead go through right in his chest feathers, and he was still at full draw, or he was still in full strut, and so he just kind of walked away, and I was able to get an arrow and shoot him, which was cool, and it was a good experience. But yeah, it is a lot riskier, and honestly, with the decoy, and they're gonna move around, and they're gonna do things, and you theoretically. Can't never say never, but you're going to have multiple shot opportunities. It's one of those deals you can really
just be patient and pick your spot.
And really just enjoy it, because it's something that comes around, and you really enjoy the show that they put on, and it really is something spectacular, But there's also times where you put the decoy out and they see that and they're like, they do get a little
Depends on how much
weird.
hunting pressure they've had.
Yeah, and so
some people can't shut a car door for 2 miles without spooking all the turkeys.
And some people can slam a car door, and that's how you get them to gobble.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
I've had that too. Yeah.
And so it's one of those deals where it's really fun. As far as archery success, like you said, a ground blind. All black clothes. There's different. There's different systems out there these days that say, that help you on the ground, but
you're shooting turkeys with a bow without a blind, and you're like trying to convince me that you've done that. Now, I have shot a turkey on the ground behind a turkey fan.
Oh, I've done that too.
And
That's
that
awesome.
has been very effective. Now, some states have banned that because they're worried about people being shot by other hunters, which is a legitimate concern.
They call
it fanning
or reaping.
Reaping, okay.
Fanning or reaping.
Yeah.
And that's where you crawl out there, and that can get a little western at times, especially.
It's awesome.
It's one of those deals though. You want to make sure that you are on a very safe area or on private land. It's one of those things that can be very dangerous on public land.
Yeah.
And so that's why I always recommend
not doing it on public land.
Yeah, or having some kind of decoy bag when you're carrying around the woods that has orange on it to say, hey, I'm a person, because there's people out there. But that style, it can get crazy. My uncle, you're gonna laugh at this, so he's a taxidermist, and so what he did is he took his stabilizers, he took the head of a turkey, airbrushed it, put a fan on his stabilizer one way, then took another one, like a gobbling one, painted it, put another fan, and so it sits out there like that on a stabilizer to where it looks like it's 2 turkeys in a full strut. And so he can just sit there on his butt, and these turkeys just come in and and it's pretty awesome. We've fooled around with making turkey decoys out of gas cans. You take a gas can, you just put a turkey head on it, and take an arrow and put it in the ground and put a fan on it and paint spray it black, and there you go. We've used milk jugs, but having a realistic decoy is probably the biggest way to have success when you're archery hunting. I've shot 4 turkeys out of a ground blind with a bow, and I like it. But the rest of them, and I've shot probably, I've shot probably 12 or 13 turkeys off the ground with my bow, and honestly, I started shooting with my bow, and then I was like, well, I started shooting them so many of them. I started, when you shoot them with the arrow, the arrow gets kind of nasty.
Yeah.
And so I've switched back and forth to shotguns and bows, but shooting them off the ground, when you have a decoy out there that breaks their line of sight, whether it's on a logging road and you're up on a cut bank, or you're just hiding off. It's the same principle. You can really, turkey's eyes are so much better.
Absolutely.
So as far as getting away with drawing your bow, if you can draw your bow with a turkey at the decoy or coming in, you can draw your bow with a bull coming in.
Yeah.
100%. That is no problem. If you've learned to draw your bow without any kind of craziness,
yeah, you can't go.
It's the ultimate test of can you do that? And like anything, you never want to set up behind something because then you're limited. So it kind of pushes your brain to learn how to set yourself up and get concealed, but watching your limbs. I shoot a 35-inch target bow with a 17-inch stabilizer and a 12-inch back bar. Those longer platforms are so nice, especially for honestly the short draw shooters. They're
refined from Bear Archery is what I've got now.
And that's a good bow.
It just came out this year, and it's longer, but it's super stable and easy to shoot, and had great success with. I'm looking forward to taking it turkey hunting. So one of the things I also like to do is have a turkey fan. So for me, when I've been on the ground, for you, it sounds like you're just kind of sitting out there. For me, what I've done, shotgun hunting before, if I have a turkey that's kind of hanging up, is that if you have a fan that you just have spread out and dried, like when I'm shotgun hunting, I have had that fan kind of sitting on the ground next to me flat, and I'll just pick it up and stick it out from like behind the side of a tree.
Sure.
And just flag it around, and they key in on that, and I just twist it, make some sounds, let them see that, and then just set it down on the ground and hide it. And pretty soon those toms will come in and they'll be looking for that other strutter. And it's very effective also. And then, there you are behind the other side of the tree waiting, with your shotgun. And so I've only done those types of on the ground strategies with a shotgun. I haven't tried it with a bow, but I might have to give the
They work. I mean, honestly, the best way to do it, I mean, all of our, pretty much like as far as, what we do, I mean, every time we shoot turkey, it's like, oh, thank goodness we got a new. It's kind of funny. My wife and I, we have our decoy, and we nicknamed him Leroy.
Oh boy.
So
Downtown Leroy Brown.
Yeah, and so every time we shoot, we're like, oh, well, Leroy's got a new fan, so we just keep him coming. But we do also use that same tactic, whether especially hunting with somebody, to have a turkey fan to. Hey,
get some attention.
And they're looking, then the person can be ready. So that's always really nice.
Hunting as a team that way.
Yeah, and so there's different ways to do it. Like you said, the decoys have come so far these days, though, as far as, and they're not. I remember, like back in the day, we actually had a full taxidermied gobble, turkey gobble, and that we had a little push button call on it with a spring, and it weighed about 37 pounds to carry around, so it wasn't very advantageous to carry around, but shoot, it worked. But
it's neat, when those turkeys that gobble and they start gobbling around you, and the whole forest just lights up with sound. It's an unreal experience.
The sounds in the morning of turkey hunting are pretty hard to beat, whether it's the little cheeseburger birds, the all those guys around, and the turkeys gobbling, and coyotes yipping, and that's just part of the way. You hear ducks on the roost, so there's all sorts of sounds that really make you appreciate it, and it's easy when the sun's shining, and you just kind of get in that super happy mood with letting the vitamin D soak it up, and
it's nice.
Go out and shoot a turkey. It's fun.
In some states you can hunt all day, and some states, turkey hunting ends, early afternoon, and in Oregon we can hunt all day. So, I try to have several roosting trees kind of located so I can start out with a spot in the morning, and then maybe in the afternoon go to a zone where I'm, no turkeys are going to be moving through to head to roost, and kind of hit those zones, coming and going from both roosting and then also waking up in the morning out of the roost tree. So I like to try to focus on those areas, and then it seems like they always have like those areas that they like to pick around. And for us, for me, my experience is, anywhere there's water, there's typically a lot more bugs. So I like to look at worms and little things living and growing in the ground, and the turkeys really like to scratch and pick and feed.
The day after a rain, you can always find a field. You can always find the turkeys
out there
in the
with
field.
worms.
Yeah. One thing that I'll mention on here, and it seems to always be true, I don't know, but when you're driving around out trying to locate a turkey, if you're saying you're in a new area, every time it's worked for me. Any place, if you say you can get an elk to bugle, like you have your pull-out spot and you bugle, and that's just a spot where you get the location, stop and call for turkeys there, because I bet money, they like the same kind of things, and they like the same calling areas where you can project sound the same, and so it's kind of funny. It's like where you find turkeys, you find elk, and where you find elk, you find turkeys. Just fall versus spring. And so the tactics where you have multiple roosting trees and their patterns, you kind of know where you are. That's the way to go about it, because you're more tactful and you're not just wandering around aimlessly.
You can do a lot of driving hunting, especially out west where
we have access.
a lot of public land. Out in the east side, Midwest where you're hunting your family farm or a farm, you're a lot more limited. Where we're at, where we have expansive public ground, these turkeys can move a lot.
Oh, they move.
And they travel. And doing a lot of quote unquote road hunting, I have found it being very effective. If I can, do some driving, use the crow call, get them to shot gobble. And then, we use our Onyx maps, and we put those spots in where we hear them gobble, where we see them, where we see hens.
And I think this is important to note too. Like when you say road hunting, we're pretty fortunate enough to have the roads that we're talking about. Road hunting necessarily aren't roads; they're skid roads. They're trails, but that's just our logging culture, and what we have in the Pacific Northwest allows us to access those things. And so they're pretty rugged roads that we're covering a lot of ground, whether it's on a four-wheeler or an e-bike or on foot or in a Razor side by side or in a pickup. Like there's multiple ways that we're getting around. And so we just have those areas to trace around, those clear cuts on those logging roads. And that's a big thing, is if you're hunting in a heavily wooded area, I'd say good starting point, find a skid road and look for clear cuts, because those turkeys are gonna be in clear cuts.
Anywhere that there's sunshine and there's
bugs.
Vegetation where there would be bugs. Exactly.
100%.
Because some of the canopies on heavy, especially in the Pacific Northwest, heavy timbered areas, there's not a lot of vegetation on the ground, because there's not a lot of sunlight that hits the floor. So there's not as much ability for things to grow. So the turkeys, the deer, the elk, the wildlife don't necessarily inhabit those areas in the same density. So if you guys can find, or when you're looking for a place to hunt turkeys, finding those openings, finding some water, find a place where there's going to be, you'd presume being bugs, which would mean there's vegetation. Also, that's, great places to start. But, that midday scouting, if you have some downtime, just don't be afraid to get out and move. Even when I'm bow hunting, my husband and I, we'll drive, we'll get a turkey to gobble, we'll jump out, usually we'll have to back up the truck or whatever, back up the quad, kind of get rid of it, and then jump out, grab the ground blind, and we have just like a little backpack set up, and just run and pop up the blind, and pop it up and throw out the decoys, and we kind of work as a team.
Oh, for sure.
He'll get the blind, I'll throw out the decoys, or vice versa, and we're sitting in a matter of just a couple of minutes. As soon as we hear a gobble, a lot of times we just roll with it.
You get pretty efficient at it after doing it several times, and
it's kind of like running and gunning with a shotgun, only it's a little slower with the blind with bow hunting. If you're just shotgun hunting, you don't even need to do all of that. You just go.
Yeah, the thing is, I found ground blinds being super effective for especially kids.
I was gonna say that,
and just because you can set up the tripod and
they can lay down and sleep. I always lay down.
You can run and get, but like you said, once you do it a couple times, it kind of turns into a Chinese fire drill. You're running, everything's like, oh, where's the bird? Because sometimes they're coming in so damn fast. That's kind of that's part of the fun. Yeah. And so, but with the ground blinds, you get super effective. And honestly, I've like I said, a good decoy and some good vegetation, logging roads, and catch them on a cut bank or whatever. You get up on the cut bank and put the decoy down on the corner of the road, and you necessarily don't even need a ground blind. You can run and gun them with a bow, and there's lots of different ways to go about it, which is why it's so awesome and so fun. So many different ways, to skin a cat. I mean, there's no one right way. That's
No.
what's super beautiful about it, is you get a lot of people that, whether it's elk hunting or duck hunting, just hunting in general, you get a lot of people that are, it's this way or the highway, or this, and you got a lot of people that are set in their ways. With turkey hunting, that's what's awesome, is you can go out and just go do it. Anybody can do it. You can take a captain hook, or you can take a box call, or a slate call, or a crow call. You can go out there and you can just have fun and just get it done. And for especially the kids on spring break, when you're just learning to drive, and you can take your buddies out and go drive around the woods, and it's something that's so small, but just those lifetime memories you'll never lose. And turkey hunting is one of those deals where a lot of people don't, they're like, I don't eat wild turkey. Well, honestly,
turkey meat's fantastic.
It's fantastic. And you can do a lot of really cool stuff with their feathers, with the arts, and the necklaces and things like that.
Their spurs.
They're so cool, just because
they're a beautiful animal.
And they have awesome rituals. They have awesome mannerisms. People, like I said, they kind of get a bad rap for being yard birds, and they're just pooping in my yard, yada yada yada. But those wild turkeys, I mean, they're cunning. They gotta live out there. They gotta hustle from the foxes and the coyotes.
Yeah, they do.
The cougars and things like that want to get them all the time. And so there's a respect for them. And in my opinion, the vocalizations of turkeys, people say, well, turkey calling's elk calling's way harder than turkey calling.
Yeah.
I think it's vice versa.
I agree. I think turkey calling's harder.
I think the vocalizations and what you have to do for turkey calling versus elk calling, there's a few things, and it's all about timing. Turkey calling, there's some similarities, all about timing, finding the right when and how, using the emotions. That gets you through pretty much any calling. But these different vocalizations that turkeys make, I mean, holy smokes, and it's something that's very hard to replicate. And so that's also a super challenge, is when you can get out there and you can get in a cutting contest with a hen that's out there, tick, 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 and you can go back and forth with them. And that's honestly so cool. The gobbling's cool, but the hen's calling back at you. I mean, you get it from both sides. It's just really super cool.
Yeah, it's an incredible experience. If you guys haven't turkey hunting, you really should get out and turkey hunt. And those of you that are gearing up for turkey season, hopefully you guys have enjoyed this podcast today. I mean, I know I'm already itching to get out in the woods, and I'm sure you are too. And Cody, I really appreciate you taking your time. How can people find you on social media?
Let's see. I have an Instagram account. It's Cody McCarthy 47, and look me up there. Okay.
And if you guys are wanting to find out more information about Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls, their turkey lineup, if you go to buglingbull.com online, or they have a Facebook and Instagram, which is just Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls. Everything is on there. If your local retailer does not have the turkey lineup, you can order it direct. They'll ship it to your house.
For sure.
Super easy. And if your local retailer doesn't have our turkey lineup, ask them to bring it in and give it a try. Try out a couple different diaphragms. See which one works best for you. You can try the aluminum or the regular slate pot calls. And obviously my tried and true favorite is the Shredder box call for sure. So, Cody, thank you so much for stopping in. And you guys, thank you for joining us today on this episode of Wild and Uncut Podcast, coming at you from Hunt Expo.
Thank you for listening to the Wild and Uncut Podcast. If you would like to hear more, be sure to subscribe to my Pursue the Wild digital series on YouTube and follow me at Kristy Titus on Facebook and Instagram.